that. Let's move then to the next thing. And this has to do with Mecca itself. Well, what about Mecca? What do we know about Mecca? Well, we don't know much about Mecca at all. In fact, it doesn't even exist on any inscription anywhere. And I remember when I was studying under Gerald Hotting in the 1990s. Gerald Hotting introduced Patricia Corona, who I got to know afterwards. And he mentioned, the only reference we have for Mecca does not come until the Apocalypse of Pseudo-Methodius, Continuata Byzantia Arabica. That is a document that was written in 741. 741 is the 8th century. Muhammad died in 632. You're talking about over 100 years later. You find this document that refers to this city, Mecca. Now, Patricia Crone made this a big thing when she wrote her book in 1977 and also in 1987, the Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam. And this is the first reference we have for this city called Mecca. Yet remember, Mecca is supposedly where Adam and Eve were thrown down to in chapter 7, verse 24,
and
according to traditions.
Went and everybody.
Yes, right. In chapter 21, verse 51 to 71, that's Abraham is supposedly in the city Mecca, though it doesn't give the name Mecca. So certainly this would be the oldest city in history, would you not say, if Adam and Eve were there?
And it's very important, right? We hear that it was the center for trade.
Okay, well, that's what Montgomery Watt said, and Montgomery Watt brings that in. But if it's the first city in the history of mankind, it's where Abraham went to in 1900 BC, and according to Montgomery Watt, in the last century, he said this is the center of trade, north, south, east, and west. We're going to destroy that in just a bit, in another one of these episodes yet to come. But can you see, obviously, if this is such a great city, if it's the oldest city in the history of mankind, if this is the city that Abraham lived, if this is the center of north, south, east, and west, then why is it that we don't find any reference to it anywhere until 741? Until 741. And I remember hearing this back in 1995, and I was gobsmacked. And I remember asking Gerald Hotting, that is hugely significant. Why does it take him to 741? He says, well, obviously this has not been written down. We just know that there's a... I said at that time, well, this has huge significance. And he didn't want to come to any conclusions. I want to come to conclusions. What I didn't know is that Patricia Crone didn't read the whole inscription. You've got to continue on. Don't just read the word Mecca, because it's there in the inscription. That's the first reference to the city of Mecca. Look and see what it says about Mecca. Look and see where it places it. Let's go back to the slide again. Now let's just read it. So I'm not going to read the first part of it, but let's come to the word Mecca there. As they consider it the home of Abraham, which lies in the desert between Ur of the Chaldeans, that's the magicians, and Kaa'ba, the city of Mesopotamia. What she wasn't, and this is something that I have to fault Patricia Corona, she wasn't paying attention to that second part. Mel really helped me out with this. Mel from Sneakers Corner. He said, Jay, take a look and see where that is. And I said, well, Ur, for Abraham, well, that's way over in Iraq. He says, no. That may be in Iraq today, but it was not in Iraq in the 8th century when this was written, 741. Where did all the people in the 8th century believe Abraham came from? Oh, they believed he came from Ur. That's right. Where is Ur? Where is Ur in the 8th century? Ur in the 8th century is way up in southern Turkey. Look at that. Let's go back to that slide again and look and see where Ur is. Ur is right there as what is Edessa. That is where Edessa is today. So this inscription written in the 8th century in 741 places Mecca, the city of Mecca, halfway between Edessa and Haran. Look where Edessa and Haran is. That's even further north. That's way up in southern Turkey. Right. Why did Patricia Crone figure this out? Because she thought that this must have been Iraq. Why? Because she didn't realize, or she must have realized, maybe she had a bad day, that the reason why we know that Ur is in Iraq today is because of a British, the J.E. Taylor, who in the 1800s, that's the 19th century, discovered it. He was a British explorer, and he discovered the modern-day Ur, or what we now know today as Ur, in southern Iraq. But that was 1853. This is 741. This is 1,000 years later, over 1,000 years later, it took to find where Ur is. And that's why she wasn't thinking this through. So the people then assumed it was near Edessa, just south of, and between Edessa and Haran, the town of Abraham. Now, in 697, there's an inscription near Taif. Taif is just southeast of Mecca, up in the plateau, that indicates the building called the Al-Masjid Al-Haram, referring to the Kaa'ba, Al-Masjid Al-Haram. Isn't that interesting? This is close to the place that later became known as Mecca or the Hijaz, but it wasn't yet called Mecca. Take a look and see where Taif is. Take a look and see where the modern-day Mecca is, and you will see that it's directly south of this Mecca that's way up there in southern Turkey, which is between Ur and Haran. as we look at the artifacts, as we put ourselves back into the 8th, in this case the 8th century, 741, even the Mecca that they have there is in the wrong place. It's much too far north, and it's the wrong Mecca. So where in the world did they get the present-day Mecca? How did this come into being? Hold on to that. We're going to get to that. That's yet to come up another episode. But I just wanted to bring that in. Can you see? The more we scratch, the more we find. Go ahead. What happens after the more we find? The more we find, the more we shine. What happens next? The more we shine, the more they whine, no how sublime. Muslims do not like us to do the scratching around. If we don't scratch, then the rocks are going to cry out for us. We need to look at the rocks. That inscription that was written, that is dated to 697, we know that because it dates it from 622. It gives it an exact year from 697, 72 years later. It now... It was actually pictured on Islamic Awareness website. That inscription has now been destroyed as of last year because they were going public with it, and I think they're realizing that they are having a problem here. I will say this: when Gibson wanted to find out what's happening in Mecca, when Gibson wanted to go and see what archaeological discoveries they're finding in Mecca, because if it's the oldest history in humanity, if it's where Abraham lived in 1900 BC, if it's the center of trade north, south, east, and west, then somehow we should be able to find some artifacts there. And they're building all these tall towers. They're building the fourth highest tower in the world, the clock tower that's there.
Right.
That has been built. And when you build towers that big, that are the fourth highest in the world, you've got to dig deep. You've got to put in foundations. So therefore, the archaeologists are there. And he went to a meeting of archaeologists about 3 years ago, and he asked them, what have you found? And they just kind of looked at him and said, we haven't found a thing except for an Ottoman fort that was built in the 1300s, in the 14th century. Nothing earlier has been found. What does that suggest to you?
It suggests that we're having just a dream land, not filled with facts or factual things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to get in another episode coming up as to what and why they had to build Mecca down there. What's going on? Again, you need to look at history. History answers that question, but not now. That's for another episode.
Amen. Thank you, brother, as always. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Now you can see why this series has been really exciting and interesting, and hopefully you've been tracking with us up until this point. Until we meet again next time, have a blessed day.